I think, Steve, you were saying that Razor was making the Berge comparison. I'll go farther back just because I'm the old bastard here. He reminds me of Barry Peterson.
I knew you were going to say that.
Now,
he does a little bit.
Same, yeah. I mean, they should only be so lucky. Barry in his first three years averaged over 100 points.
Just find him a Rick Middleton to play him with.
Well, yes, yeah. Or 1980 styles defense too, right?
Right.
The puck not being contested every foot of the ice. So
goalies that don't all look like Michelin men and have normal pads,
Right.
Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I believe this is the 31st episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can check out my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Join up with a premium membership. You get all of my articles sent right into your inbox. Today, we've got the Boston Herald, Steve Conroy, and the Boston Globe's Paul DuPont, a couple of longtime beat writers with me that go way, way back to the beginning of Patrice Bergeron's career with the Bruins and before that. Before we get to them, though, let's just real quickly want to thank our sponsors, Fanduel Sportsbook, as always. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Go to fanduel.com/Boston. Kick off the NFL season right now that we're a few weeks into it. And also Factor Meals. Shout out to them, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Delicious meals ready in 2 minutes. Chef made, very healthy. Head over to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50% off your first order. And now, Steve Conroy, Paul DuPont, thank you for coming on the show. Just your thoughts about what we've seen now to this point in training camp now that the preseason schedule is over.
Want me to go first?
Sure, go for it, Steve.
Yeah, standard protocol.
Jump in.
Up until last night, I was getting pretty concerned.
Okay, that's enough.
They hadn't shown much. They were, getting badly outshot in every game. They were outshot last night too, but they were outshot 7-1 in the first period. But I didn't think that was like really indicative of the play. I thought they were created more last night. We got our first look at that Coyle line with Marchand in DeBrusque. I thought it was pretty good. I think there's something there. And of course, the Poitras kid is the story of training camp. He's even getting comparisons. I saw Andrew Raycroft compared in some ways to Patrice Bergeron last night, and that's kind of quite a comparison. But it's I can see it as well. And one thing, Patrice was a year younger than Poitras, but on the other hand, Patrice didn't have to play center when he came up. He started on the wing, third line wing, so he was able to be, just kind of groomed for that position his first couple of years with the Bruins. But this kid's going to have quite a bit on his plate.
Yeah, Patrice Bergeron, the year he played in the NHL from beginning to end, was the youngest player in the NHL. And there is something to be said about that being above and beyond as far as an accomplishment goes. But the circumstances, you're absolutely right about, just continuing to play well and continuing to surprise people and then just lasting longer and longer until he makes it to the very end is very similar to what Bergeron and his voyage was in training camp. I was encouraged too, as you mentioned, that top line, but also Charlie Coyle in the bumper and scoring a goal, them getting a power play goal. I liked what I saw out of the Bruins power play, getting some production. They still look sloppy at times and a little disorganized, and I'm still not sold on Charlie McAvoy as a point guy on a top power play unit, even after all these years, but at least they got some production, which is a good place to start, and they just got some practice with a few reps on that top power play unit. Dupes, your thoughts on the preseason as a whole now that we've seen all the games?
Yeah, I like all your points. Preseason or camp, the 10 or 12 or 14 days that we watch it, you only do get sort of these little flare looks at guys. There's really no at the end of it saying, well, here's the comprehensive picture, especially now. I mean, in years past, because of Krejci and Bergeron and the established order, we really knew what the template was, and it was just kind of how how are they coming back from surgeries, or are they going to be completely healthy? But we knew. So there's that sort of aspect of wonderment to this camp that I've really enjoyed, and it exemplified greatly by Poitras, who now I'm using Montgomery's pronunciation, so I'll never get it right. And just having a kid and having that, that's kind of what we live for here, is the new season and new talents. I like Lohrei just as much because he's got the reach, he's got stride, and he's got what frankly Charlie doesn't, which is shot ready attitude. And not only shot ready, but and maybe it's hubris, maybe it's just stupidity or naivete, if you will, but he has it and he's using it. Not in a large number, but you can see when it's coming to him, he wants to let it rip. So I like that. And also in that vein, I brought this up last night in one of the interviews with actually Charlie Coyle. So often we see kids come up and they're deferential to the elder statesman, if you will. They have those talents, they don't use them. Use them, right? Use them, and that's really that's fun. So it's an interesting camp. I'm going to come. I suppose this is another chapter of this podcast, but how do I feel about them as a team? Frankly, I feel this is ridiculous in hindsight, but I feel like I did just 1 year ago, is they'll be in that 8-9 mix for the wild card, which is exactly what I was saying a year ago, and they blew the thing apart. So shows you what I know.
My optimism, and we will get back to this a little later on. Great segue there, Dupes, to sneak preview it a little later on the show.
Channeling each other.
Yes. Hats off to you, my friend. I'm a little more optimistic now about this team after watching Poitras and Lohrei and the way they performed in this camp, for sure. And even, to a lesser degree, and we're going to go down the list with a bunch of these guys, to Johnny Beecher too. I thought had a very strong camp and has looked good and looks like he could be a very viable fourth line center candidate for this team. But to your point about Lohrei, he even looks a little more polished just offensively than Charlie McAvoy, as far as running a high point on a power play, even just, having the puck and handling it and passing it both ways, being ready to shoot, sort of being, a triple, quadruple threat, whatever you want to call it, with the puck when he has it in those positions. I felt like watching the power play, the puck moved and functioned better as a power play when he was out there running the point, best of all of those defensemen when they were out there. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. There's definitely some things he has to work on, and I think he's the one I think that is definitely going to go to Providence for a month or two and finish out all that stuff before they potentially bring him back. I think that makes the most sense given all the defensemen that they have under NHL contracts. But let's go right to the players, and we'll go one by one. We've talked about Poitras a little bit. 3 goals, 5 points in 5 preseason games. Darren Peng, I thought, said it best last night on the TNT broadcast. After he scored the goal, he basically said, "It looks like he belongs here." And that was an NHL player saying, a former NHL player saying, this kid looks like he belongs with the best, fits, should be there. And by all rights, I feel the same exact way. It would be a disservice, I think, to the team and to him if he at least doesn't get the 9 games that he's afforded going into the regular season. And then they can make that decision when the 10th game comes up, if he's a permanent member or going back to the OHL. But Dupes, your thoughts on his chances of making the team? Do you think he's already stamped that's it, done deal? Do you think there's still more consideration there?
This is Poitras now. Yes.
Yeah.
I think, I was asking Montgomery postgame about it, and it's really impossible to deny him a chance now for at least the 9 games, right?
Yep.
This whole discussion would be framed differently, guys, if it weren't for the salary cap and the guys under contract and the 23-man max on the limit, because you could make a case for them keeping 25, 26, 27, and you can't. So I think there are other shoes to fall here in the next 48, 72 hours that is going to define this for us. I think you're going to see guys on waivers, whether they get picked up, whether that's Greer, whether that's Zabora would get picked up for sure.
Yep.
So I think that's a safeguard there for him. But yes, I think, absolutely. And I think Steve, you were saying that Razor was making the Berge comparison. I'll go farther back just because I'm the old bastard here. He reminds me of Barry Peterson.
I knew you were going to say that.
Now,
he does a little bit.
Same, yeah. I mean, they should only be so lucky. Barry in his first three years averaged over 100 points.
Just find him a Rick Middleton to play him with.
Well, yes, yeah. Or 1980 styles defense too, right?
Right.
The puck not being contested every foot of the ice. So
goalies that don't all look like Michelin men and have normal pads,
Right. So, and again, he is, because he's the eye candy and he's getting the points, and he plays, at least so far, cerebral game. What we haven't seen him consistently, and this will be the ultimate test. Not that every team's got that 6'4" horse in the middle anymore. That if we go back to the Jason Arnott days or something, but will he be able to withstand real pressure of big guys night after night? And my knee-jerk reaction to that is no. That said, we had the same concerns about Bergeron. Steve's point starts over on the wing, so that kind of eases it here. And the only thing I would caution here, and I'll throw it back to you guys, is there's this growing mentality that if he's here, then he's here to be the pivot for the number 1 or 2 line. That I don't see. I think that's kind of leapfrogging to a place that he wouldn't be ready.
Snap into action this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining Fanduel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
And I believe that's why we saw him with Morgan Geekie and Trent Frederick last night, because that's probably what we would see to start the regular season, is him on a third line. Steve, do you think there's any downside whatsoever to at least having the 9 games to look at them before you make a decision? I feel like that's a no-brainer. Like, they almost have to do that. And I'd asked Jim Montgomery about it a few days ago, and he just basically was very positive about that and said it just gives us an extended training camp to continue to, a preseason to continue to look at him and see if he can keep up pace for the 9 games.
Yeah, at this point, it's a no-brainer to keep him for the 9 games. I mean, you don't have to make a decision on him until the first couple of weeks of the season, so you don't make that decision yet. But I think he's going to be here, long term. I just don't see a better solution there. Maybe when the live bullets start flying, it's going to change. But I think even though he's small, he seems to be able to slip off of hits and work his way along the boards to win pucks. I think he's going to be fine physically because he doesn't play a physical game. He can withstand. His physical game is much like Bergeron's physical game. He is able to get into the boards, and dig the puck out somehow, some way. He does it. So I think he'll stick. And I was glad to see him able to pretty much succeed with that line with Geekie and Frederick. Because, Kevin, I believe you're right that it's just too much to ask right now to put him on one of the top 2 lines. And it's also would be a kind of a kick in the pants for a Coyle or a Zacha, who've been kind of waiting for this opportunity. And he'll get his chance. If he's going in a game, he'll get his chance to play with one of those guys. One of like Pasta or Marchand or whoever it may be.
And it sets up for, if he continues to play as he's playing now, and he is the guy in the regular season that he's been in the preseason, and I'm talking about Poitras, that he eventually, a few months down the road, may end up with Marchand anyway. Right. And you can slide Coyle at that point down back to where I feel like his more natural spot is, and maybe a third line center position. And it sort of brings you back to the depth, some of the depth that you had last year, if all those things go right. Obviously, you're going to have to see months, I think, before he's given the car keys to the black and gold sports car and, allowed to be a top six center and play with Marchand every night, but at least gives you a skilled option to play in that top six center spot if you're not getting enough offense, and Coyle or Zaka, whichever one, can't be more of a line driver. And like people have told me that Marchand really likes Poitras, and I think that's a great sign too. If the captain and one of the veterans and the older guys respect the kid, think he can play, and want him on the team just as much as management, the coaches, everybody else does, and I think that's an important aspect of it too. For me, watching him, he actually feels like kind of a hybrid of Bergeron and Krejci to me, where he definitely wins battles, even though he's not the biggest guy like Bergeron does, and he's not afraid to go into the danger areas to get the puck. But he has the IQ, the playmaking, some of the things, the vision, some of the things that Krejci has and had, he seems to have too, pulling the puck back and finding a guy in the middle of the ice, the trailer coming down. Some of those classic playmaking passing plays are just, that's very Krejci-like to me. And if he can bring a little of those elements to the center spot, they're in way better shape in the middle of the ice at the center position than I thought they were going to be going into this year, if he can continue to maintain what he's doing. The real question is, at his build, at his strength level, is he going to be able to, do that for 82 games? But when they played him in the back-to-back with the travel, and he ended up digging deep in the third period, and making a play in that game, that, kind of showed me something.
Yeah. And it'll help him too if that is in fact the line he plays with Geekie and Frederick, two pretty physical guys with good size, I think, and they looked pretty good last night. I hadn't seen a whole lot from Geekie up until last night, but I thought he played very well, and I thought he made a terrific play on the empty net goal.
Absolutely,
flipping it up.
We haven't even talked about Frederick here. I thought Frederick had a very good game.
He was good,
and he integrated well with them, and another guy who technically is a center. Yeah, they haven't used him there, but we used him there very sporadically. But
I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, it may have. But again, what? Some of that, and no one more guilty of this than me. That you get it in your head what a guy is or isn't, and then I don't know. You know what? If we'd done that with Brad Marchand and said, we all had him third or fourth line when he came up, and look what he came into. Coyle last night gets a power play goal and started to look more comfortable in that role. We've never seen him in that role, so I think it's worth giving guys some rope. I would agree right now about Frederick, but last night he did show puck skill that I haven't seen.
Yeah, Steve, I think you tweeted last night that Frederick was playing like he wants to play with Poitras on his line during the regular season. I thought that was a good point and a good observation, because I thought the same exact thing. His level of play definitely went up, and I think the kind of player that Poitras is, where he passes the puck, he sets guys up to score. I think you're going to see a lot of players that are going to want to play with him, just given his style of play and the way he plays on the ice, if he can continue to maintain it. Let's move on to the next one, Mason Lohrei. We've talked about him a little bit as well. I've been really impressed. He looks like a really solid puck moving defenseman. He looks like a guy that's very comfortable running the point of the power play. I think the offensive skills are very much there, passing and shooting. The questions to me are more sort of defensive zone stuff and the D zone part of the defenseman position that I think he needs maybe to continue to work on for another month or two down in Providence, even though I didn't see any glaring weaknesses when he was up here in the preseason games playing as well. But your thoughts on Lohrei and where his trajectory might be for this, at least first few months of the season, Steve?
In a perfect world, I think you would send him down to Providence for a couple of months, let him try a few things, see what he can get away with, see what he can't get away with. On the other hand, they might be a better team with him in the lineup right now than without him. Question is, where does he fit? He probably fits with where he was last night with Carlo. Who comes out?
Well, that's the thing. I feel you're going to have to, I think, make a trade. I would guess, if you're going to keep him here to start the season, right? Because somebody's going to be pissed off that they're not playing, or their role has been severely reduced. And plus, cap space wise, I think you're going to have to make the move.
You may have to, but putting the money aside, I think my point of view, the best lineup they would have would be to have Lindholm play with McAvoy,
Yep.
Lohrei with Carlo, and I'd keep Forbert and put Grzelcyk on his right side.
Yep. And have Shattenkirk be your 7th D.
Yeah. He might not be happy with it, but
yep. Hey, he's on a 1 year.
C'est la vie. C'est la vie.
He's on a 1 year short money deal.
Yeah.
Dupes, your thoughts on Lohrei and whether you think he'll be on the roster to start the season, or if you think, for me, I'd send him to Province, even if it would make you the better team out of the gate. I would let him play there for a month or two, and I would just kick the can down the road a little bit of having to make that decision on your roster and who's going to play, who's not, because I feel like when Lohrei is eventually a permanent member of this defenseman unit, that frees you up to trade one of the other defensemen for some salary cap space that you desperately need. And, maybe some of the assets that you've traded away in recent years, get back a draft pick, get back a prospect, something like that. Whether it's Grzelcyk that you're trading for or whoever it is, you may be able to get some value back. And to your point, Steve, maybe get a better player in the lineup that improves your team when Lohrei comes up permanently.
Yes, as Steve was working through the pairings there, and I was agreeing with him, and I was saying, something. This is spelling Grzelcyk's fate because because of his salary, because of his size. We know Montgomery isn't big on small. He had that dissertation last year about, well, you can win a cup with one of these guys, one small guy back there. And coming from a small guy, I took that as the voice of authority. So,
yep.
Although a different position. So on a personal level, I would not like to see it because I like Grzelcyk and Boston guy, yada. But this is a team with no cap money. I think they could get a 2nd round pick for Grzelcyk for one of these cap bottom feeders, Anaheim being one. Maybe Chicago. Chicago's got a lot of dough too. So teams with money. He does have game. He's a good team guy. All of that. Whose game excites me more? Lohrei, no question. Size, reach, upside, all of that. I do think he could play in the league today. Just as much as I feel that Poitras could play in the league today. And again, you don't know where today goes to 2 weeks from today or 3 weeks from today. But in the moment, he excites me as much because of all that, awareness, which frankly, we didn't touch on that on Poitras' game last night. I watched 2 or 3 times. He had that Gretzky ability which was instantly know where the puck was going to be 2 blinks later. And he was over there in 1 blink. Right. So that's really impressive to me, that spatial awareness, get to it, be ready for where the puck isn't in the moment. So the other, I'm not trying to make a case here for Grzelcyk, but what I see happening here is they don't have the cap space. Sweeney loves to go into the season with, $2 or $3 million in his pocket for when the trade deadline comes. Maybe the better play on Grzelcyk would be in February, but I think for all these variables we're talking about, numbers of candidates they've got, all of that, I think he's really vulnerable at the moment.
We do have Factor Meals to help us out. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit when it does get busy, when it does get crazy, when we do need a quick meal. They fuel you up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Takes less than 2 minutes to cook them. They're fresh, never frozen, meals ready in 2 minutes, like I said. They have calorie-conscious options, going upscale with some of the things they're offering now, like surf and surf meal options, roasted garlic filet mignon, and shrimp and Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon, which is like right in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of stuff I'm all about. So it's got everything for everybody. There's 34 plus chef prepared, dietitian approved weekly options for meals. You can get snacks, you can get breakfast items. Like it's a great deal. So if you want to get Factor Meals, go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use the code Haggs50 to get 50% off of your first box. It's a great deal. I've tried it. It's fantastic. I recommend it to you. We love these ready to make meal kits. especially when we're on the go with our kids. So one more time, that's factormeals.com/Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. You won't be sorry if you go to Factor Meals. It gets the Haggs thumbs up seal of approval. Yeah, and it could play out like a situation like when Johnny Beecher got traded. It was right before the season started, right towards the end of training camp. They made a move because they had too many defensemen, not enough spots, and they recouped a couple of second-round picks when they traded him. And I think your point about the size is bang on, and one of the most important parts of the whole equation, because if you look at, and the Bruins know this, the teams that they've been losing to in the playoffs recently, across the board, their defenseman units for the other teams are 6'2", 210 pounds. Just everybody. They're all well over 6 feet. They're all over 200 pounds. They're all big defensemen that are pushing forwards away from the front of the net and keeping them out. And, you don't have that when you have a Grzelcyk on your back end as much. And I'm the same as you. I love Matt Grzelcyk. I like and know and appreciate and respect his whole family. He's definitely got game. I thought they missed him when he wasn't in the lineup against Florida last year, his puck moving abilities against that forecheck that Florida was throwing at them. And I definitely think he's going to be able to help another team. And part of the reason you trade him is because he does have value. He has value to other teams around the league. There's no question about it. I just see Lohrei as an upgrade in terms of size and maybe even skill to a degree. Let's move on to the next one. Johnny Beecher. I feel like if the Bruins went into the season with Johnny Beecher centering Jacob Lauko and Milan Lucic, I think that would be a really effective fourth line, and I'd be totally comfortable with that. Just your thoughts, Dupes, on Beecher's camp, and if you think he makes the team out of camp.
I'm less excited of the three players we've discussed, him being the third now. I'm less excited. I know he's got the speed, he's got size, he's got legs, all of it good. I'd like to see more assertiveness. And I say that about a lot of guys, but for where he is and how I would cast him forward immediately, I'd just like to see, more of that sort of jam and nastiness. If that exists, I don't know if it even exists anymore, but so I'm not saying he's just another guy. He's a good prospect. And, I'm sure the three of us has kicked the stuffing out of them here over some bad drafts and everything. But he looks like he can be a player. I don't know if he's going to be a top six player. And if you're going to be in that bottom six or middle six, I'd like to see more of that physical awareness attribute. Got the size.
Yep.
I haven't seen the nature yet.
And maybe playing with Lucic in a fourth line kind of role brings even more of that out of him. I know when you talk to Ryan Muginel and some of the Providence Bruins coaches, they said that Beecher kind of made that transformation last year in his pro year from being a guy that was a first round pick coming from a big time college program like Michigan and sort of having the airs about him of how he was going to play, to realizing he's probably, similar to a guy like Brian Boyle, he's going to have to play a details game, a bottom six game, play more physical, do more of the detail-oriented games, killing penalties, winning faceoffs, all that stuff, being physical, if he wanted to actually be an NHL player. He wasn't going to be a top six, NHL player that's going to be scoring goals and getting all the glory. Steve, do you think Beecher has a chance to make this team out of camp?
I think he should. I think he's had a good camp. If he had a little more touch around the net, he could be a top six guy, but I just don't think he has that. He hasn't shown that at any level. But the speed and, I'll use a basketball term, the length that he has with the stick and the reach and everything, he's perfect for a fourth line center. He wins faceoffs. He's been better than what I expected. I had my doubts coming into camp. Had my doubts coming into camp, but he's done pretty much everything that they've asked of him, and I think he can be pretty good at it. And your comparison to Brian Boyle is bang on. Brian Boyle was a first round draft pick. He had achieved more up until now that Beecher has. He produced more at BC. He produced at the AHL level. But he just wasn't that top six guy in the NHL level. So what Beecher's got to do. He's got to embrace this role, do everything that's asked of him. And so in preseason he's done that.
Yeah, and I see the other candidate. Nobody is really of the other fourth line center candidates that I've watched. Nobody has really jumped out at me as seizing that job. Whether it's Patrick Brown, Mark McLaughlin had a really quiet camp. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought now would be his time to really step. And I know they were playing him more on the wing than center. But if he was going to grab an NHL spot, I felt like this might be the year where he was going to have to do it. And his camp, as compared to Beecher and some of the other players, I didn't think he stood out enough to me. And it might be by virtue of, I don't know if I saw anybody else that jumped out at me as like, that's the guy that's going to grab the fourth line center spot.
Yeah, I was surprised last year when he was the one to get sent down.
Yeah, me too.
They kept Lauko, and they turned out to be, to be right about that. But this year, I wasn't surprised when he got sent down. And not that he had a really bad camp. It was just, he didn't do anything. Didn't score, didn't do much.
And speaking of not doing anything, and we've said a lot of nice things about a bunch of young Bruins players that are hopefuls for the NHL roster.
I think I know where you're going.
Get to it.
Let's flip the coin and talk about Fabian Lysell, who has really not shown much of anything recently. It's been a tough year for him, whether it was the World Juniors, where he didn't show anything for Team Sweden, whether it was development camp where, he wasn't on the ice to start the camp. And when he came on, he was not anywhere close to a dominant force that I thought he should be going into a pretty important professional year for him. And, once again at this camp, both, the rookie camp, I guess he was okay, but this NHL camp did not see much at all. And really the last preseason game I watched him play in, he wasn't even looked like he was trying to make plays with the puck. It looked like he was kind of behind the pace of play and the speed of play, which for a guy that is reputed to play fast just is a warning sign to me that his game is not with him right now. So, thoughts from both of you guys. Steve, start first with on Fabian Lysell.
Yeah, I think we've said this, in the press box. The most impressive he's been was with those first two preseason games that we saw him 2 seasons ago.
Yeah,
he got his nose dirty, went to the net. He did everything that his critics said he couldn't do. But now he's kind of reverted, and he looks a little lost out there. He was having a pretty good season down in Providence when he went to the World Juniors, and then he had started off having some bad luck, being snake bitten in the World Juniors, and then his play started to deteriorate. And he came back from juniors, and he was never really regained his game. And then he got hurt. He took a really bad shot, really cheap shot, high hit. Got concussed, and that takes a lot out of you. So it's he's got to rebuild his game, and I don't think it's a slam dunk that he's going to. So they've got a lot of work to do with him.
Yeah, Dupes, your thoughts on Lysell?
Yeah, thus far he sort of gives me the Ryan Donato and his Bjork vibes. Really good wheels and pedigree from the draft, all of that. But I don't know. At this point, I just wonder if it's a processing issue. Like as we kind of critique NFL quarterbacks. They have this skill package, but can they think the game fast enough? Right now, and there's the question about his size, and he really does look like a junior high or middle school, I guess we say now. Middle school body and frame. But if you're lightning fast, and he is in spurts, we see that you can get away with that. But at some point, you got to have something other than that giddy up, and that again goes to hockey IQ, processing, and I think that those elements I haven't seen any really hint of that with him. It would be tough to give up on him because we know we can put up numbers. We've seen that at other levels. But right now it does not translate to the game we watch night to night for 6 and 7 months.
No, and then I think there is still some hope for him. Obviously, like he was very young to be in the AHL last year, and he was doing pretty well, to Steve's point, until he went to World Juniors. And between coming back from a bad World Juniors experience and the concussion he got, it was kind of a double whammy with him, where he clearly wasn't the same after that for the rest of the season. And it affected him into the summer, obviously, because the Bruins said he wasn't, starting off full bore development camp because they were sort of, bringing him along slowly coming back from that concussion. So, we'll see, but I just, it's very enlightening to me to watch other guys like Lohrei and Poitras really flash and show, what we're not seeing in Lysell. The confidence with the puck, the processing the game, to your point, Dupes, the skill level, all those things that they have that, Lysell just was not able to show in this training camp. You hope he's able to regain his game and find his game down in Providence starting the year there. And he sort of takes the experience in the right way. Just overall, in general, expectations, thoughts for the Bruins this season. The regular season is going to start next week. Should be really fun. Connor Bedard covering in Boston. That'll be a nationally televised game. It should be good hockey theater, a great way to start the season, and a great way to kick off, all the centennial stuff that the Boston Bruins are going to be doing. I feel like the bones of this team, it's still a playoff team. The defense all coming back, the goaltending coming back. They still have elite scorers and offensive players on the wing, and David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, guys like that. So I feel like there's enough here for them to, at the very least, be a wild card team. But I think we're also seeing some teams in the Atlantic Division, the typical, teams that you kick around at the bottom of the division, Detroit, Buffalo, Ottawa, those kind of teams are starting to get better and are starting to claw towards, being playoff caliber teams. It's going to be tougher for them. But I still see them as a playoff team that's not going to be good enough to, go on a cup run this year. Dupes, your thoughts on the Bruins overall, where you think they're going to fall and their place in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, and I think for the current discussion, you do have to make just what you were doing, Haggs, is, what are the relative strengths and weaknesses of some of these teams? Right now, Tampa's going to be without Vasilevsky probably till at least Thanksgiving. Yep. He's a huge part of that team. Yep. There's a statement. Your number one goaltender is a huge part of your team. Yeah.
Your number one goalie that plays like 60 to 65 games too, that you ride like a horse every year.
Yeah. So I don't think they're going to fall off the face of the earth, obviously, but they're coming in with one leg and a splint, if you will. Jersey, I think, has the potential to be a horse. They got a lot of good young forwards. They play a very structured, smart game. So they're on the up. Ottawa's on the up. Detroit should be better. I don't think Detroit's going to get there this year. But yes,
I think watch out for Buffalo with Devin Levi and all the skill players. Look at you shaking your head, Steve. You're not.
I'm not shaking my head. I'm saying absolutely on Buffalo.
Oh, all right. I thought you were saying shaking your head.
I'm all in on Buffalo. I'm all in on Buffalo.
Yeah, I think Buffalo is going to be really, really strong this year and much improved. With the defensemen they have, with Tage Thompson, I think they have a legit goalie in the Northeastern kid. I think he's the real deal. That's a team I think you got to watch out for in the Atlantic Division.
And they got another kid, the Benson kid.
Yes, the Carney kid
who's popped.
Yes, I loved hearing that story about how he comes from a Carney family and they traveled all around Canada. He would go to hockey camps in all these spots and outposts in Canada where the carnival would go to. He would go to the hockey camp during the day, and then he would work like the corn dog stand at the family carnival at night, all over the place in Canada. What's better than that? That's a great story.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, and again, just on the Eastern Review, if you will, they're in flux like a number of them here, but they did what they have, what they have more than anything is two tremendous goaltenders, and you can go along. You're in the mix almost automatically with that. It allows some of these kids we've talked about the chance to grow, because not every rush back into in the opposite end or into your end is death defying. So they're intriguing in some ways, more intriguing than they were last year, because going back to the thing, we knew what they were. We knew exactly what they were last year, and we weren't that high on them. We don't know this year, and it's kind of nice to have that introduced again, to be able to watch guys develop.
Yeah, and people will ask me how I think the Bruins are going to be when they bump into me or they're talking to me, and some will say they think they're going to be terrible or they're going to go off a cliff this year. And Dupes, you're so right. I tell them, teams that have good goaltending will never fall off the cliff and be terrible in the NHL. It's just not going to have. The teams that are terrible almost always universally are the teams that have no goaltending, shaky goaltending. But those are the teams that really turn into really bad, terrible teams that are lottery picks. And I just don't think the Bruins are anywhere close to that. Steve, your thoughts just on the Bruins within the Eastern Conference mix in the Atlantic Division and what you expect them to do?
Yeah, it's interesting that one of the things Monty said to you last night, Kevin, their last preseason game against New Jersey last year, they looked awful.
Got smoked.
And I had forgotten about that totally, because they had already lost to Jersey in the preseason, and I remember going into that final preseason game thinking, okay, we better see something here tonight, or if not, it's going to be a bad season. And they got smoked, and then they go and win 65 games. So it's really hard to judge off the preseason, but there are some cracks here. Obviously, I think they're part of that vast reservoir of teams that are maybe in, maybe out. It's just a I don't want to say mediocrity, but it's parity. I think they get in, but they cannot. This is not a team that can afford a major injury. So everything's got to go right. I see Buffalo on the rise. I still see Florida as a good team. They have those injuries to start the season, and I thought last year the injuries that the Bruins had to start the season focused them and made them a better team because of it, because they knew what they were up against right off the bat. So I think Florida is still a good team. Ottawa is going to be a good team if they can stay healthy. If Josh Norris can stay healthy. So that's three teams that they're going to be up against. Tampa, I mean, they're missing Vasilevsky, and that's a huge deal. They've got Stamkos, they've got Kucherov, they've still got some good players. They've got Hedman, they've got Sergachev. They're still a good team. They're going to be in the mix. They're right with you. So I think that I think it's coming down to the last 2 weeks of the season to see if they get into the playoffs. But it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see, how Lohrei develops. It'll be fun to see how Poitras develops during the season, if he becomes more than what he is now, which is, probably a third line center. So it'll be a fun season.
Yeah. And I think, at the end of the day, I feel like this team will end up being a wild card. I definitely think it's going to be going into the last few weeks of the season. They're going to be battling with other teams for the playoffs. Should be fun, but it'll be interesting, as both of you gents have said, that there's a lot of unknown about this season, when for so long we've kind of known a lot of the cards that are going to be dealt that we're watching with this Bruins team when we cover it day to day. There's a lot of different factors, different scenarios, different combinations going on here, that it's going to be a whole new, a brand new ball game for us to cover. So that's going to be fun. Steve, Dupes, thank you very much for coming today. You brought up the respect level of this show about 10 notches by both coming on today. Longtime beat writers with the Boston Bruins, thank you very much. And thank you to our sponsors, Fanduel Sportsbook, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. FanDuel.com/Boston. Get in on your football bets. Bet against the Patriots every single week until they show they can do absolutely anything, because right now they absolutely stink. And also thank you to Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. Once again, Dupes, Steve, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you at the rink.